Good afternoon and welcome to this afternoon's National Science Week session on reef compliance. My name is Mel, I'm a marine scientist with the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. I'd like to begin today's session by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet, as well as those traditional owners that might be watching us this afternoon, and those that are the traditional owners of the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area and its adjacent catchment. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and recognise the custodian role they play for the Great Barrier Reef. Today I'm joined by two of my dedicated and skilled colleagues from the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, Dr Damien Weekers and Owen Witt. Our Reef Joint Field Management Program is essential for protecting the animals, habitats, heritage and benefits that the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area provides us with. With the reef stretching over 2,300 kilometres along the Queensland coast, our compliance team operates a world-leading program designed to support the resilience of the Great Barrier Reef for future generations. For all of you joining us virtually today, you'll have the opportunity to pop questions up for us to answer. But first of all, I'm going to pass over to Damien. Damien is a criminologist here at the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. He has over 10 years of experience in law enforcement and marine protected area management. As part of the Reef Joint Field Management Program, Damien has worked to advance intelligence-led and problem-orientated approaches within the compliance management practice. Thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Mel. I'll just share the screen now. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. The first point that I wanted to emphasise, and something that Mel alluded to, was the size of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park and the important implications that this has on compliance management for us. The first slide demonstrates this fairly well. So the area of the marine park is actually over 344,000 square kilometres and nearly 2,500 kilometres long along the Queensland coast. So that's hard to get your head around. So there's a couple of other diagrams there that show this is roughly the size of countries like Italy, Japan, Germany, or Malaysia. So it's obviously impossible for us to patrol the entire area of the marine park. So this means that it's really important for us to have a good handle on compliance issues so that we ensure that our compliance patrols are allocated to the right places at the right times. So the Joint Field Management Program is responsible for compliance management in the Great Barrier Reef World Heritage Area. The program is a partnership between the Commonwealth Government, the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority and the Queensland Government through the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service. And it's been in existence for over 40 years now. The program has its own vessels, but works very closely with other agencies, such as Queensland Fisheries and Boating Patrol, the Queensland Water Police, as well as Maritime Border Command. So when we talk about compliance management, it's really about designing strategies that help people to be compliant with the rules. So essentially the goal of compliance management is to push people down into the bottom part of this pyramid through various strategies, whether it's education, engagement, or compliance enforcement. So on the side of this pyramid, you can see examples of groups of people, and then on the other side, on the right, the treatments that we can apply to those groups. So for example, down the bottom, we have people that are willing to do the right thing, and we engage with those groups by making it easy for them to be compliant through education, providing maps. Eye on the Reef App, for example, is a good example of that. The next group up are people who try and do the right thing but don't always succeed. So we assist their compliance through advisory letters or giving them education around things like how to read plotters to make sure they're in the right places. The next group up are people who don't want to comply, and this is sort of starting to get to that harder aspect of compliance through detect and deter strategies. And for example, we might detect people fishing in the green zone, in a no-take green zone, and they might end up with a ticket. And then the next much smaller, hopefully, group at the top are people who have decided not to comply, and we can prosecute those people under our legislation. So the compliance program for the Marine Park Authority is risk-based and intelligence-led. So when we talk about risk, we literally sit down and discuss all the activities that happen in the marine park and then rank those according to their likelihood and consequence. Some of those activities include things like commercial fishing in no-take marine national parks, shipping groundings, large bulk carriers, for example, running into reefs, which cause a lot of harm. And then other aspects of risk, including illegal recreational fishing in no-take zones. We use intelligence analysis techniques of these risks to help build strategies aimed at limiting the risk and ensuring that people do the right thing. So an example of that is how do we analyse illegal recreational fishing or poaching, we sometimes refer to it as, in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. So the map on the left shows the detections of illegal recreational fishing in no-take marine national parks for the past 10 years. So you can see that there's quite a lot there. We can use this information, incident data, to look at where the incidents happen, when they happen, who the offenders are, and where they come from. Each one of these elements is really important and can be used to design specific compliance management strategies, whether it's around patrolling or community engagement and education. Poaching hotspots happen when you get the same activity occurring in the same places over a period of time, and through that analysis we can really define the characteristics of those hotspots. For example, we know that for illegal recreational fishing, most of the incidents that we find, 80% actually, happen in 20% of no-take zones, and half of those incidents happen in only 10 zones. So it's quite concentrated in a small number of places. And the highest risk zones tend to be those directly adjacent to major population centres. Most of the risk, or most of the incidents that we see, happen over weekends, and there's also definable seasonal patterns. And wind conditions, sea conditions are a major contributor to that. So if we look at a specific area, such as the Capricorn bunkers in the southern area of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, we can see that the map on the far left is the zoning plan for that particular area. The map in the middle shows how we have used intelligence analysis techniques and statistical modelling to identify the hotspot areas within that area. So you can see that the high risk areas there are the more red, orange areas, and the lower risk places are headed towards the darker blue areas. And then the final map there shows how the link between communities and a particular green zone in there, which is the Lady Musgrave Island green zone. And we know that most of the offenders that we detect in that zone come up from southeast Queensland. People drive up to 1770 from Brisbane, for example, to go out to the marine park, and some of them end up being detected fishing out there. So we use all this information to develop compliance management strategies from education, engagement, and patrolling. And now I'll hand over to Owen, who will discuss further the patrolling and surveillance effort by the compliance unit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So my name's Owen. I'm with the field operations team, and I wanted to talk about the surveillance and compliance that we conduct in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, and how it flows on from Damien's work with the framework of the risk-based analysis. So the surveillance and compliance, we have dedicated compliance teams, but following on from what Damien said with our partner agencies, we rely on everyone. We have dedicated compliance teams, but the program is about everyone doing their bit and everyone being out there. And the basic message about my presentation is that if the weather's good, that we're going to be there, and we're there day and night, and we're always going to be there because it's very important for what we do and supporting the work that Damien and the field management program does. So last year, 1920 financial year, the program completed 1,052 dedicated compliance days, which it's a massive effort. It was the highest on record for the output, and that's a combination of increased capacity within teams and also smarter compliance and better strategies. So the surveillance program is shaped around weather and high risk times, and some of those high risk times, for an example, is social factors like school holidays and long weekends, and things like fishing competitions. So part of the planning side too is about what's happening in the area between Bundaberg and Cape York, what's happening, what's the weather doing, and then we match our surveillance to align with the event. That's maximising the output for the benefit of the park. So the patrols run day and night. They're run by a network of agencies. We use different assets for our patrolling. We use vessel-based assets that we have, the marine park boats, and we use helicopter stuff too. Our area surveillance is a major component of our program. I'll get to that with the next slide, but Damien just mentioned about the Capricorn Bunker Group and his work that he's done and the maps that the team produce and the background work that they do. The two maps on your screen are patrol tracks, so where the actual patrol vessel or the aerial asset goes, and you can see how we cover those zones in the saturation. So it was just designed to throw that up, just to give someone a visual representation of, there's the planning side about where to go, and then this is the physical application about where the asset went. So the Capricorn Bunker Group, the recreational fishing and boating in central Queensland is massive. There's large visitation from southeast Queensland, and the area of the Capricorn Bunker Group is very special to a lot of people, and it's I've got a lot of multi-use zones. So when I talk about marine protected areas, I'm referring to green zones, pink zones, and orange zone. Before I talk about this slide, I just want to give some practical application of the the Capricorn Bunker Group, and I'll use the weekend that's just gone. It was a long weekend on the Friday for the Yeppoon Regional Council and also the Eka Show from Brisbane. So it was a long weekend. There was 170 trailers at the boat ramp at 1770. So we had boats out, we had helicopters out, we had multiple crews working day and night, rotating shifts on the boats. For everyone's knowledge, there was 1,800 nautical miles was completed over the weekend just in the helicopter patrolling all these zones, and particular effort was paid to the Capricorn Bunker Group because of the boating activity that we saw. And out of that, there was a significant amount of non-compliance, but that's also matched to how many people using the park too, and also how many assets we had out there working in this area. So it's just relative to this area, and it's relative as in it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the week just gone. So the next slide is our joint special operations. We target non-compliance. So even though if the weather's bad, we're still out there too. We're targeting operators, treating the risks, as Damien said, and the multi-agency work involves police and Queensland Boating and Fisheries Patrol as our primary for when we go and do our vessel boardings. The operations run through the peak time. Chinese New Year is a classic one where we're focusing a lot of effort on the reef line fleet. By using other agencies, we get a greater compliance and footprint in the park, and then those agencies have their responsibilities to report on too. It's not just like the police would be doing random drug testing out there, and so there's benefit for all agencies. Out of that, the joint operation, the information and the intelligence sharing is what forms Damien's work. So the in-field stuff, the vessel interactions allows for the education and the engagement. It also allows for the patrol officers to field questions to the public and clarify misconceptions that they may not have. So the more out there, the more engagement we have with park users is a benefit for all. So this is a photo of aerial surveillance. So we're sitting in the helicopter and we're working a zone as to how we see fit. Every zone has a different hotspot, or different, might have a wreck in there. So there's known places within a zone that we go, and our vessel, our aerial work is designed to go around what we know in that zone. So it's not just going in the middle of a zone looking willy-nilly. We're doing dedicated areas to maximise the effort. And this is the same at night. When we're working at night on our vessel operations, we're targeting the known hotspots and the known wonky holes and reefs that people go that's situated within a marine national park or a green zone. So this is just a view for the members of the public to see. This is when we're sitting in the helicopter, this is what we're seeing. We're talking to the pilot, and then we're manoeuvring the asset as we see fit to benefit that zone. And what we've gone away from, instead of just going through a zone, is multiple laps of a zone. So go and do a lap of the zone, and then go and land on a helicopter pad, and then go again. And the outputs and the benefits are increasing and great. So again, it's just another photo to represent the helicopter coming in. You know, we've got special operations that run on islands where we have fuel stored out there, and that we have, you know, specific operations to target different risks. It's not just being in a helicopter every day along up and down. It's about going where we need to go, and at that peak time. So there's some very exciting parts of our job, and we get to see some lovely parts of the Great Barrier Reef. And yeah, but again, it all comes down from what we do in the field is the backbone from Damien's work and other members of the field management program. So Protect Your Patch is a campaign that we've run with to try and focus on the recreational fishing, and the Protect Your Patch has been in all different regional areas. The last one was Whitsundays, Ely Beach, but it's a 1-800 hotline that we encourage people to ring up and report non-compliance or concerns they may have about members of the public or something that's just been operated in the park. It could be something as simple as a dog on an island, or it could be a ship transferring oil out of its ballast. There's all different range, but we encourage people to know that 1-800 380-048 and report the incident as they see it. The next one that we have is the Eye on the Reef app, and it's an app that goes on smartphones that you can use when you're not necessarily in service, but it's an app that we encourage when we're doing our field engagement with recreational fishers. We encourage them to download. It's free. It's an app that you can just see where you are before you go fishing, and you can literally just press a button. It's location censored. So if you're in a green zone, it puts you in a green zone, so you know you can't fish there. So it's a very handy tool, and the message that we're trying to get out now is to use that app for recreational anglers, so they know where they are. Even if they're not sure about how they use their GPS, the app's there. We're trying to make it foolproof for the park users. Thank you.
Thanks, Owen. Thanks, Damien. I think it's clear that, you know, penalties for offences that occur on the Great Barrier Reef are substantial, and they reflect the value of the World Heritage Area and the significant impacts that illegal activities can play. Hopefully from Damien and Owen's presentations today, you understand that there's quite a lot of sort of data crunching and intel that contributes to GBRMPA's compliance program that we run with the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service and our other sort of partners out on the water to maximise our reach. And I think the take-home message certainly that I got from Owen's presentation, that if the weather's good, there'll definitely be patrolling happening, whether you're down in Bundaberg or all the way up in the Cape. There'll be someone out there watching. So I do want to just ask a few questions, and I'll pass it over to the audience to see if they have some questions. But Owen, to start with you, for someone who's got nearly 20 years of operational experience in compliance and surveillance, what are some of the, I guess, funniest things you've seen happen out on the water?
Thank you, Mel. It is very interesting, some things we see. Probably the funniest thing that we see, and it's actually more regular than we see, is various forms of nudity from vessels, and especially the recreational yachting sector. It's quite common, but it's just one of those things that people get a surprise when a helicopter comes over the ridge and there's a boat there, and so that's one of the things. But the other thing that is quite amusing for the dedicated officers is the attempts to conceal evidence and people's length they go to try and hide the evidence of fishing or whatever it may be. I just have one quick example. One day I was there was a man in a boat and he had a bunch of crabs in a bucket, and he saw me coming from a boat and he tried to hide them underneath the boat by getting out on the sandbank, and in doing that he knocked his 2 front teeth out. So he obviously was worried about getting caught, but he got a fine, and he also needed some new teeth. So
thanks, Owen. So Damien, as GBRMPA's intelligence officer, you've recently completed your PhD. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in your journey to date that led you to this position, please?
So compliance is about understanding human behaviour and trying to get people to do the right thing, as I explained. So my background is in social science. I did social science at university undergraduate level. And then I went into, as a public servant, into the Department of Defence, where I was trained as an intelligence analyst. After a few years in Canberra in the Northern Territory, doing various jobs, the opportunity came up to move to Townsville as the intelligence analyst for the Marine Park Authority, which meant coming home for me and returning to the coast of Queensland and the Great Barrier Reef, which we grabbed with both hands and took advantage of that opportunity. And since then, GBRMPA has supported me to go through a PhD in criminology, which is really that extension of understanding human behaviour, but in a compliance sense, so really directed at what we do in the marine park. And my study and thesis looked directly at compliance management in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. So that's how I got to where I am today, and I just completed that in May this year.
Thanks, Damien. And what about you, Owen? What are some of the skills and qualifications that people sort of need, or backgrounds that would lead them to the role of a compliance officer who spends most of his time out in the water?
Thanks, Mel. I love my job. I get to go in a boat and be at sea and fly around in a helicopter and looking at this wonderful reef. It's a magnificent form of employment. I'd encourage people out there, that young people or emerging students, if they're interested in our job, it's worth looking at. But there is some forms of qualification. So we have some form of tertiary education is beneficial. Our one requirement is a Cert 4 for government investigations for using powers and boarding boats. The crew, my staff, have commercial vessel manning tickets, which allows them to drive commercial vessels. So things like coxswains, master class 5s, they're a journey to get. They're not something that you can get straight away. So it's if people are interested, start the journey now. The training for our specialised activities like aerial surveillance is done in-house and through other providers. And the skills, and it's skills of the job. Skills is knowledge of the marine environment and a love for the marine environment and a love for protecting something.
Thanks. And Owen, what are some of the common mistakes that you see people making out on the reef?
So simply, it's not having a functional understanding of their navigation equipment. They may have a GPS plotter, but it's the interpretation and it's the application of the plotter and how to read it. So the layers within that plotter are about the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, where it shows up the green zones or the marine protected areas. So this is why the Eye on the Reef app is so important. If you're having trouble, you're not sure about your plotter, the Eye on the Reef app has been made to simplify it and to work in conjunction with the paper map and also the GPS plotter. But the biggest problem that we see is misconception is we thought we were outside the zone. We know there was green zones there, but we didn't know this was one. So encourage people on the Reef app.
And Damien, these green zones that Owen's talking about, or these no-take zones, they play an important role in making sure that we have healthy fish stocks. Is that right?
Absolutely. So when the marine park was rezoned in 2004, it increased the number of no-take marine national parks from 3% to 33% of the entire marine park, which is substantial. And studies since the rezoning have shown that there's a lot more fish within inside green zones compared to in open areas. And other studies have shown that fish from or the green zones produce fish that go outside into the open areas for fishing. So when there's high levels of non-compliance in these zones, it undermines people's recreational fishing outside in blue zones, and also undermines the broader biodiversity and protection of the marine park. So they're really important.
Thanks, Damien. And Owen, in your presentation, you made reference to pink zones and orange zones, sort of the special management provisions that we have in place. Can you tell us a little bit more about what they are?
Yeah, definitely, Mel. So the green zones is what we call a marine national park. We're referring to green zones. So the other ones that we are referred to a pink zone. It's also called a preservation zone. It's marked pink on the map. Preservation zones are aimed to preserve the reef in its natural state without human interaction. There's nil entry to those zones. An orange zone are called scientific research zone. They're designed for scientific research, and there's one at the Australian Institute of Marine Science, and there's another one at One Tree Island off the Capricorn Bunker Group. Again, they're nil entry at all, unless you're engaged in scientific research. For that, then you need permits through the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. There's public appreciations as another layer, and that is about no spearfishing. It refers to no spearfishing in some yellow zones. So again, encourage everyone to know there's zoning through the Eye on the Reef and the layers that are in it.
Thanks, Owen. And Damien and Owen, we have a question from the audience. I guess they're keen to know why you love the reef. So Damien, you first.
I think I've grown up, I'm from Yeppoon. So I've grown up since a very early age, I guess, with the marine park as part of my life. So to be able to dedicate my life, I guess, and my work life at least, to helping protect the environment that I grew up in and now my kids are growing up in as well, is something really important to me. So there's definitely a connection between myself and my family and the marine park. So it's a privilege for me to go to work every day to help preserve that.
And how about you, Owen?
Yes, very similar to Damien. It's about the enjoyment I get personally out of being on the water and the reef, but it's about too the natural ecosystem supports so many jobs, so many livelihoods with the commercial fishing industry, tourism. There's so much heritage in the reef with Indigenous heritage. It's just a science. You can learn so much from it, and we're still learning. So it's just a beautiful ecosystem that is, yeah, it's magic. And again, we've all got kids. It's about our kids growing up with it and learning about this natural wonder.
And finally, if someone sees something happening out on the reef that they suspect's illegal, what should they be doing?
So we encourage them to report the best they can. Obviously, we're not asking people to get in harm's way or try and stop it themselves. That's what sort of we're there for. It's about reporting through the Protect Your Patch phone number, 1800 380 048, or you can actually report through the Eye on the Reef app too. There's a tab on that too. But it's about knowing how to report too. We want to know who, what, when, where, why, and we want photos. The more information you can provide, the better for how we can either respond directly or follow it up down the track. It depends on the information as to how we respond, but never think it's nothing, just report.
Thanks. And just to wrap up, on behalf of Damien, Owen and myself, we'd like to thank you for joining us. If you'd like any further information on GBRMPA's National Science Week activities or anything that we've discussed here today, please head across to our website, www.gbrmpa.gov.au, and wish you all a lovely afternoon. Thank you.